For those in the room, lots of students, which is so great, and a nice surprise to see students here. This is the first face-to-face international. It's a bit of an experiment, and the idea is that we bring two really smart people together, relatively unscripted about the conversation. The coming together is really important, especially after, the last 2 years that we've lived. And we'll have conversations about the work we do at William and Mary and, why it matters in the world. The idea is also that this be a little bit fun. So there will be some serious questions, but not just serious questions. And I am going to get started right away with the questions. First, introductions that will be quick. You can read everybody's bios online. But next to me is Carrie Cooper, Dean of Libraries. And next to Carrie is Leah Glenn, the Edwin L. Cummings Professor of Dance and Africana Studies at William and Mary. My name is Teresa Longo. I'm a professor in the Modern Languages Department, and I'm also the Executive Director of the Reves Center for International Studies, which is where you all are right now. Someone came in a bit ago and said that after many years, this is the first time he's been in the Reves Center. We want people in the Reves Center, so really, really glad you're here. Questions? All right, Leah, I'm starting with you because I have a prop that goes with you. This is a 2019 edition of the magazine called World Minded, which is published at the Reves Center. Kate Hoving, who is in the back of the room, is responsible for this publication. And in 2019, it featured Leah. Leah, in this magazine, the article about you has a great title. That must be Kate's title. And it is A Passion for Dance and Justice. So we're going to talk about your trip to South Africa and what the two concepts that are the title of this piece have in common, justice and dance. Well, I said we're going to talk about that, but actually you're going to talk about that. So please try to connect the dots for us on those two things.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Teresa. I took students to Cape Town, South Africa. I've taken them 3 times on 3 occasions. Once in 2012, again in 2016, and last time was in the summer of 2019. On each occasion, I taught a course entitled African American and South African Dance, or Movement Exchange, rather. And we studied both African American and South African modern dance choreographers and how their work was and has been influenced by the civil rights movement and apartheid, and the similarities between the two. Movement is, in my opinion, a strong and viable means of communication. It's the first way in which we communicate as babies in our mother's womb. We're communicating that we're alive through our movement. And it's my belief that gestures can be powerful and oftentimes transcend verbal communication in many ways. For example, when you reach out to someone and you place your hand on their shoulder, that can mean many things. You could be trying to get their attention, but it could also mean, I'm here for you, I've got you, or I stand for you. So we used dance as a lens to just take a look at the issues of the civil rights movement, apartheid, and how it relates to what our country and the world is dealing with currently. So yeah.
So do you have, by any chance, a story you could tell us about something that happened on any one of those 3 trips that is really memorable and sticks in your head as something that we'd like to hear?
Oh, wow. There are so many. There are a lot. Sure. I think the most important experience that the students can have, it's not necessarily what happens in my lectures or classroom. It's more about the interactions that they have with other dancers, other students that they come across, other people. And giving people a chance to not just tell their own story, but to demonstrate their own story through movement, and being able to share that on a visceral level. we took several dance classes or master classes from Jazz Art Dance Company, which is the oldest modern dance company in South Africa, or one of the oldest. And it was like throwing many of them into the deep end, many of the William & Mary students into the deep end, but they really embraced it and were really excited to learn and immerse themselves in a different way of moving, a way of moving that most of them had not experienced before. So there was a chance for the William & Mary student to learn traditional Zulu dances, and a chance for members of Jazz Art Dance Theater to learn some of William & Mary student choreography. So there was that exchange. And like I said, I believe it's the conversation, the interaction in these moments that, those were the moments where I believe they learned the most. The greatest takeaways came from those experiences.
And you don't have the barrier of language when you're in a different country and you're dancing.
It's universal.
It's universal. So I just had that thought when I was
Absolutely.
listening to you. It's powerful to be able to move together, and you can share that.
Yeah. So it was wonderful.
For somebody who's not a dancer, that's really,
Yeah.
that would be scary for me, but.
It would be scary for me too. So what was the last year that you went? Is it 2019?
2019.
No, so the world changed after that,
Mhm.
and you were describing a few minutes ago these gestures. People don't touch the way we used to. So what do you think about that kind, or is that changing and people are starting to touch each other again?
You mean as it relates to dance in general?
No, as it
Or
relates to like living in COVID.
Oh, wow, yeah. There's this kinesthetic empathy that fuels a lot of my choreography and creative experiences, and it's been stifled.
Okay.
And I think that that's true for most people, just in their daily interactions, not being able to have that physical connection in the same way. So yeah, I think that that's an obvious change in my opinion, and I mean, people deal with it in different ways, but it's been a tremendous hardship in a lot of ways, and in a variety of ways, in terms of mental illness, mental health as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That makes sense. Carrie, let's switch over to you for a second. So you're the Dean of Libraries, and I have a sense, having been around you since you've been here, that you work creatively, and you're also like Leah in some ways in terms of figuring out how your work is connected to communities and maybe even justice. Am I right about that? Is that true?
Sure.
So can you explain for us then?
Sure. I do find that being a librarian or leading, I think leadership is creative. You're faced with all kinds of challenges, and the biggest challenge for library leaders, I think, is trying to communicate what we do to the people that we serve. And so trying to connect the work of the libraries to the university's goals, the needs of the students and the faculty, and even to the staff, just that there's creativity in that work. I think a large part of my work is about creating community for our students, a place to go and be. I always say the building itself is a service to our community, so that was very different in COVID because, for a while we were closed, and we're never closed, and so but we still had people coming, and we had people mailing books to students at home, and we were working with our publishers to open textbooks and make our textbooks available because people left their books in their rooms. So a lot of the work of libraries is about creating connection with those you serve and building community. And in terms of the social justice, I think it's so important that we make sure that everybody feels welcome in the library. So, you come in and you see, greetings on the banisters in all the languages. You see our land acknowledgement in the lobby. You see the beautiful piece by Steve Prince celebrating the 50-year mark of African Americans in residence. You see the Asian Centennial exhibit, about 100 years since the first person from China came to William and Mary. And so we really think hard about our spaces and how we use our collections and our exhibits to represent all kinds of perspectives.
And what about when both of you talk about communities, and there's this William and Mary community, like all the students and faculty and people who are here, but what about like outside of William and Mary? What's the dance outside of William and Mary connection? What's the library outside of William and Mary connection? Like, how does that bond happen?
So when I came 10 years ago, there were certain people who could come into the library, and for a price they could check out books, which didn't seem fair or good for a public institution. And so one of the first things we removed fines for overdue books. We removed fees for people to come in. I mean, we have enough books at the library at SWAM for people to be able to come in and take. I mean, I would much rather have a book sitting in an office or on somebody's desk at home in the community than sitting on the shelf at the library. So we have worked really hard to make sure that people from the community know that we are a public institution and that we are a point of entry for the Williamsburg community. And we do a lot of that by bringing people into the Special Collections Research Center to see those materials. And we have programs that welcome people in, and we work really closely with Williamsburg Regional Library. So not only do we want community members to come to SWAM, but we also want the employees at William and Mary to have access to the Williamsburg Regional Library. And not everybody that works at William and Mary actually lives in James City County or York County, but we have made it so that everybody that works at William and Mary can go in there on their lunch break or after work, and they can have access to their books and their collections, because they may not have time when they get home to do that.
So Leah, you mentioned people that you worked with in South Africa other than the students from William and Mary. It would be great to hear more, like, who were the people, and how did you get to know them, and how did you get connected to them, and what kind of interactions did the students have? What was that like really like on a daily basis? Like, what did people do, and what did they talk about?
So there were two communities that were key or most, I would consider most important in all three trips. The company that I mentioned, Jazz Art Dance Theater, and the members of the company, they are from all over Cape Town and surrounding townships. And so they bring a lot of history and a variety of experiences to the table. And so our dancers were able to connect with them and just learn about what their lives are like, and share and exchange those kinds of experiences. There's also, I don't know if this is still true, I saw Sylvia come in. Sylvia's here. There's a service learning component. Is that still true? There's a service learning component. Good to see you. Service learning component, and we were able to go into the township of Kailicha and work with, on all three occasions that I went with middle school students. And in addition to tutoring them in things like math, science, and English, we got to dance with them. And, the first year, William Mary students taught them a jazz dance that I choreographed, and they taught William Mary students a South African gumboot dance. And so those are the kinds of exchanges and experiences that I feel are just really priceless, memorable.
So I would think it'd be kind of daunting to work with middle school students, but know. And I also remember reading in the article about you that even the first time you went, you were undaunted. That was a quote that in the article. It says you're undaunted. I'm thinking, wow, cool. I would be very daunted doing this work. So I think that's impressive. But mostly it makes me wonder then, like, what do you find if going to, traveling with students to a place different and far is not daunting to you? Like, what is? What does kind of make you nervous or uncertain or like gives you pause?
Oh,
You don't get to say nothing. Well, you can say nothing. You can say
yeah,
whatever
I
you
may.
want.
I'd like to think. I'd like to think about that.
Yeah.
I hope that I approach every situation, and it's like, okay, what are the consequences of this? What are the consequences, as it relates to my students and everybody around me? That's how I
Traveling in a big group itself is a little bit daunting. I mean,
Yeah,
because
but
that's a lot of responsibility.
It is. But I love teaching, and I enjoy what I do. I enjoy sharing my art with others. And so the thought of having another opportunity to do that and immerse myself in another culture and learn how they do that, how they communicate through movement, is exciting. So let me think about what I find daunting. It's not that, though.
It's not that. Well, that is the thing that's very exciting about the work you do and the work that happens in lots of William & Mary study abroad programs. And there is a side-by-side goal rather than, I don't know, coming in, taking, learning, returning, but working side by side makes things different and better
Yeah.
and less daunting.
Yeah. True.
Also.
True.
So Carrie, I'm going to switch a little bit to a different kind of question. Although I would love to hear what you find daunting as well, but probably nothing. But one thing I would like to have you explain to all of us, and maybe some of us know more than others, but what exactly does open access mean? What does it look like here? What is the whole story of open access?
Okay. So open access is a movement to remove barriers to research. And so it is another way, besides making our building accessible to our local community, we want to remove barriers to access to the faculty, the scholarship, and the research produced at William & Mary. So if, especially when we talk about, you think about users, I mean, in higher education, we have access to library subscriptions. We're part of this really special, privileged community that gets to read whatever it is we mostly want. But if you think about people around the world and who would like to read what it is we're producing here and at other institutions, you really want to remove barriers. And for a long time, libraries have paid publishers for subscriptions, and there have been barriers to access. And so there is a movement in higher education, in libraries and around the world to remove those barriers so that people can read the research and they can have access to help solve communities and their own problems. There's a lot of what we're doing here that can help somebody somewhere else, but if they can't get to it, it can't be helpful. So that is one aspect of open access. Another aspect of open access is also barriers for college students for what it takes to be engaged in a class. If you can't afford the $200 textbook and you make a choice not to buy the textbook, are you going to learn? Are you going to be able to learn on par with the students that do have access to that textbook? So libraries are a lot about equitable access and about making sure that people can get to the research and that can get to learning materials too. So I think the pandemic helped us see how much it is important to have access to things online, and so yeah.
So William & Mary has transformed then in terms of our openness and
No.
no, okay.
No.
Is in transformation. It's transforming.
Yeah, we're working on it. We are working on it. We have an institutional repository, William and Mary ScholarWorks. We have digitized all of our dissertation back files to make all of our dissertations and theses accessible online for graduate students. We now are in a conversation right up front with our graduate students when they're getting ready to publish their dissertation about whether they want to embargo their research or whether they want to make it accessible. And we're talking to faculty all the time about the choices they make about where to publish. And that starts with a conversation about who do you want to read your work. And then it makes me think of dance, right? Because, yeah, so, not everybody's scholarship is the written word. And so I think a lot about how the library supports the work that you do.
You want to tell them, or do you want
Yeah, no, please. We have a...
This
We're
is great.
collaborating.
Okay.
We're already collaborating. There is History Makers is a digital archive founded by a woman, Juliana Richardson, out of Chicago.
I think so.
And it focuses on African American stories, prominent African Americans. And it's a fabulous resource. And I spoke to Carrie about this resource when I received a grant from History Makers to produce a work focusing on the Little Rock Nine and the desegregation of Central High School in 1957 in Little Rock, Arkansas. And this piece started out as a solo called The Youngest of Nine, focusing on Carlotta Walls Lanier, who is the youngest. And I used interviews or oral histories from the History Makers archive as part of my research process. And I don't know how I'm not sure. I think Warren Buck came up to me and said, "Oh, so talk to Carrie Cooper." Because she's the one who okayed the purchase. And so I contacted Carrie and told her about my research, and so we're collaborating, and they're supporting the full-length version. So it started out as a 4-minute solo, and it's now turned into a 30-minute multimedia piece, which includes poetry written by Dr. Hermine Pinson, who's in the back there, as well as my choreography. Steve Prince is doing the set design and painting costumes, but a lot of this comes from support from SWEM. So collaborating with you has really been wonderful, and I'm hoping that I can pick your brain some more.
Yeah.
Regarding this project.
Sure.
So yeah.
So one thing we think about a lot in libraries is what research, what are we paying for? And so when Juliana was first getting started with her business model, and she had she had a product that she wanted universities to purchase, right up front, we were one of the early subscribers. And we also had just started an oral history program at William and Mary and had hired our first oral historian in the university archives, which was really an important part of the 50-year commemoration of the first African American students in residence. So we were doing a lot of oral history, so it made sense that not only are we going to share our local histories, but we're going to have more of a global aspect to oral histories and have a bigger archive available. When I heard that you were finding inspiration for your work from the oral histories, it was just really exciting. And the fact that the vendor that we purchased it for was actually giving you seed money and supporting your work was another aha moment, like, wow, this is just, it's interesting to see how it grew. And then I will say that we spent a lot more money purchasing databases and subscriptions for our scientists than we do for our arts and humanities faculty. And so, if when I get approached to financially support something in the arts and humanities, I want to be generous because we aren't necessarily able always to support you in terms of our collections as much as we do the others. So it's been nice to be able to do that, and we do it with our private support. I mean, we don't have a fabulous collections budget at William and Mary, but we do have really good alumni support, and they want to support this university. And so it's nice to be able to share what people are generous with us. It's nice to be able to share it with other parts of campus. So excited to see that work come to our campus sometime this year.
This year, I'm not sure.
Okay. Next year? I can't
It'll premiere in San Antonio at the Carver Community Cultural Center, and then we'll be in Richmond at Dogtown Dance Theater, and then we'll be in June, and then we'll be in Denver in July, and we're scheduled for New Orleans next year, but hopefully we'll be on campus 2023, maybe sometime 2023.
That's wonderful.
So we'll see.
I'm trying to get her to agree to some pop-up dancing on our new swim patio. That would be fun.
Yeah.
I think pop-up dancing is that's really daunting, but great. So
I'll check in with my students.
a question I want to ask also, and I don't actually know if you know the answer to this, but we've talked, I mean, the words like global have come up about, global access and things like that. What about libraries around the world, international libraries? Like, what do you know what they're doing? Like in, I don't know, Copenhagen or Cape Town or, Santiago or someplace. Like, is the change in the way libraries are happening around the world? I guess that's a quicker way to ask the question.
Yes, and I would say that it's probably, they're ahead of us in Europe for sure. They have really put the pressure on big publishers and have been able to come to some new agreements. As a country, put the weight of their country behind their agreements. That's more difficult in the United States, but we're certainly working in our consortium. So the Virginia Research Libraries are the ones that work together to push back on Elsevier for the contract in Virginia. We don't necessarily, we certainly all learn from each other, and we are all helping each other out with these agreements, but we all have individual contracts, so it's a little bit harder here. But it's definitely a global issue, and it has the attention of our government. I mean, if you're federally funded research, within 1 year you have to make your research open access, and so faculty are looking to the William and Mary Repository ScholarWorks as a place to put that work. So that's exciting.
Is there, that is very exciting. I'd like to know more about that over time. It seems like a great direction. I want to ask you about, like, if there's anything that's ever happened in Swim Library that's funny.
Oh, Lisa? Oh, things that are funny. Yeah, all kinds of things happen.
Can you tell us one?
Throw me a...
Sorry.
Didn't someone, release a chicken through the dollar? What? Someone released a chicken in the library 10 years ago.
Okay.
A live chicken?
A live chicken, yeah. It was like a senior prank or something.
I mean, we've had streakers in the library. I haven't ever been witness to a streaker in the library, but that has happened. Chickens, naked people. Sometimes we'll find funny things on YouTube. Like, people will have like a whole dance party in the library, or they'll have put on a play, or they'll do some kind of a creative thing in the library, and we won't know it happened.
You already have pop-ups going on.
We
and
do.
You just don't know
we
about
just don't know.
them.
This is true. Let me think on that. I might come up with a
that's good.
different story. Oh, yeah. We had people making grilled cheese sandwiches for sale in one of the study rooms yeah, that was fun. Small business minds, right? Little entrepreneurial action going on at SWEM. Yeah.
So Rob Rose, who's in the audience, brought me once when we had a meeting, like a mini story or something like that, that you had something going on where, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So can you tell the whole group about what those are? Because that was just a beautiful little idea, I thought.
So, SWEM wants to be for serious study. We also want to be whimsical and fun. And so Lisa and some of the librarians came and said, we want to get a short story machine. There's this short story machine that some bars around the world and some libraries around the world are putting in their space. And you walk up to the machine and you can pick 1, 3, or 5 minute story, and depending on what you choose, you will get is the length of the ticker tape that will be spit out. So it spits out a short story for your enjoyment. And so I think the coolest part of the story, especially for the writers in the room, is that they actually have a database of short stories, and our students right now, there's a contest where you can actually have your work published in their database of stories that will be in all of their machines around the world. And last year we had, I think, 3 students. Their work got selected. So it's called Long Story Short, and I think the deadline's coming up. And yeah, it's fun. If you're not sure that you've seen it, when you walk into the front of the library, look to the left, and you will see the machine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. How's our time, Tyler? Okay, good. So a question I have for you both is that I like to think about how talented people like you are and how many possible choices you might have made other than the ones that you made in order to get to these jobs. So what I would like to know is if you could do a job that's completely different than the one you have right now, what job would it be?
Oh, completely different.
Yeah, like you don't get to be like some other
A yoga instructor.
a yoga instructor. Yeah, it's
I
too
know,
close.
I know.
Something
It's movement. You can't be movement.
Something a little further than that.
But why? Why would I do that?
I know.
I knew you were going to say that kind of. Yeah.
This is sort of artistic as well, but I enjoy cooking, and I would spend more time learning how to cook different things. I enjoy that. So maybe a chef?
Ooh.
I don't know. It's still
Yeah.
creative.
Yeah. No, that's
and
great.
there's beauty,
It's not,
but there's
it's
beauty in
different.
that. Or maybe an interior designer. I just like pretty things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Right, which I'm going to go back to dance again because it reminds me of this question about one of the reasons I wanted to put the two of you together is there's something about knowledge, like the creation of knowledge, what a library does in helping us make new knowledge, right? Is that is dance also it is a form of creation? Is it a form of producing knowledge?
Absolutely, particularly in the area of self-discovery. Right? I don't think that, I don't know off the top of my head of any other discipline that allows for self-discovery the way that movement does, the way that dance does.
Carrie, what is the job you would have?
I do love to cook too, so we have that in
Yeah.
common. I would love to be an architect. I've had the opportunity to work with lots of architects as a librarian because I think libraries have a building that they're working with, and that building is always evolving and changing. And so you have to kind of think of new ways to serve your communities. And I have always loved the time that I get to work with people that are creative like that can take inputs from hundreds of people and, actually program a space in new ways, and then to think with designers to make them places you want to spend time and you want to be. So maybe an architect.
Yeah, I can see that. I think
Yeah.
you would be a good architect. It's combines the beauty and the functional work and science. So yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I see that.
And by the way, I'm already in school. I'm taking classes right now.
Right.
You may know that. So yeah, this will be my last degree.
I read that you're getting a doctorate right now, and it would be great to hear more about that. What kind of doctorate is it going to be, and what are you like focusing on?
Well, it's out of our School of Education. It's an EDD program. It's for practitioners who are in leadership positions that really want to think about policy, planning, and leadership. And it's just always something that I'm a learner. I like to learn. And so it's just given me permission to think more in a more structured space and with other really cool people about my work and about higher education in libraries in general. So I've loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And
been
this
fun.
is
It's
your,
hard.
you say this is your last degree that you're going to get?
Oh yeah. Well, I have a teaching degree. I started off as a teacher, and then I have a library science degree. But yeah, it's hard to go back to school at my age.
Why? Are the students just quicker, or?
It just takes me. I think it takes me sometimes longer. I'm not as good at moving between 4 screens and organizing my research, and I'm learning RefWorks and Zotero, and I'm ordering 10 examples of note cards because I want to go back to the way I used to do it. It's just hard. I don't know. I learned to do it different. I learned to do it a long time ago. So going back and learning new ways to keep yourself organized and on task, it's just different. So, but it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
So Leah, is there a question I should ask Carrie that I haven't asked Carrie?
Have you ever taken a dance class before?
Oh, have I?
And would you take a dance class?
Well, I loved jazzercise, if that counts. I don't think it counts.
Okay.
I know. No, I've never. I took dance when I was a child.
So you have.
I took dance when I was a child, and one of the weirdest memories I have is after a dance recital, my dance teacher took me to Disney World because I lived in Orlando, Florida, and she took me to one of the fancy restaurants. Didn't tell my parents. Everybody was freaking out for a while. But anyway, that's a really weird memory that I have of my dance.
That's not happening. I'm pointing to my students. It's not happening.
I have not taken dance as an adult, but I know I would love it.
It'd be fun.
I would
It's
love it.
really
It would
fun.
be scary. It would be a little scary for me to do it because I don't have a lot of confidence around dance, but and my sister was a really good dancer, so I always compared my dancing to my sister's dancing. But I'd love to take a dance class. Maybe when I'm done with my classes, I'll sign up for a class with you.
Do it.
Okay.
All right, then last question to Carrie. Is there a question I should be asking Leah?
Are you still using oral histories now that you used oral histories in this particular choreography and as the inspiration for this choreography? How are you thinking about oral histories going forward, and is it still a strategy that you use with your students in the classroom?
Yes, absolutely. So I haven't used oral histories this semester yet, but last semester I taught a Call 100 called Movement as Communication. And the students were required to I asked them to use History Makers for some of their research, that database for some of the research. And I'm requiring my dancers, for my own company, I have my own company, Leah Glenn Dance Theater. I'm requiring my dancers to use History Makers as part of their research coming up for the performances that they'll be doing this spring, summer. They don't know that yet. But I have an anyway, I have a dramaturg working on that as well.
I want to ask you, do you know about Medici? Have you used Medici with your students?
I haven't.
Okay. So I will say that one of the coolest subscriptions that we have at the library is called Medici TV, and it is a live performance subscription. So any day you can get on there and you can see hundreds of recorded symphonies and dances and films about artists, and it is fabulous. And like I said, we really struggle to make sure that we're supporting our dancers and our dance program, and our students who really are taking art classes and dance classes. And so anyway, you should all go look at Medici TV. It's cool.
Will do.
Okay.
All right, so I think we're going to use the last few minutes to hang around in the Reves room if you have time. Talk to Carrie, talk to Leah, talk to each other. And I want to say thank you for coming. It's great to have students in the Reves room, like really great. Thanks for helping launch this sort of experiment of people talking with each other in public. Also, Tyler and Kate, who are at the back of the room, did a ton of work to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
As well, and we're gonna keep going with it, getting some interesting people together to have conversations. So.